thank you for joining us today. I'm Stephanie McFarland, Chair of the Public Affairs and Government Professional Section of the Public Relations Society of America. Today I have with me Bob Dittmer. Bob Dittmer is the Director of Public Relations Graduate Studies at the Indiana University School of Journalism here in Indianapolis. Bob comes to us today with more than 36 years of public relations experience, which includes approximately 20 years of experience in leadership in combat units in the U.S. Army, as well as 20 years as an educator, and more than 26 years as a professional public relations expert. Bob today is going to talk to us about strategic public relations planning. Bob, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure to be with you today, Stephanie.
Thank you. This is one of the topics that our membership has indicated in our annual survey that they'd like more information on, so I'm really glad that we could tap into your knowledge and your past experience to share that with us.
Well, it's my pleasure, and of course, as you well know, this is one of my favorite topics to talk about as well.
Yes. Can you tell us, in your expert opinion, how would you define the practice of strategic PR planning?
Well, you're right, Stephanie. Everybody has their own definition, and quite frankly, they're probably all just as valid as anything that I would provide for you. Let me give you a kind of a vernacular approach to what strategic planning is. Strategic planning is really bringing a long-term perspective to management advice and counseling about how the organization should communicate in order to create and maintain relationships. It's the bigger picture, it's the longer view. It's not the day-to-day tactical sorts of things. In today's environmentally unfriendly environment, these two analogies probably won't be well received, but they're nonetheless accurate, and that is the old adage that sometimes when we find ourselves too busy killing alligators, we forget that what we're really here to do is to drain the swamp. That's kind of an analogy for strategic planning. What are we really here to accomplish? How do we marshal all of the assets, all of the tactical assets that we have available to us in order to help our organization achieve what it really is supposed to set out to do?
Okay. Bob, in talking to a lot of my government colleagues, one thing that I hear a lot is that strategic PR planning really belongs in the corporate environment or for publicly traded companies. But, I've been working in government for 4 years now, and I actually see that, there's a lot of value in having strategic PR planning in the public affairs role. What's your view on that?
Well, you're absolutely right, Stephanie. Strategic public relations planning has everything to do with public affairs. If you're in government, what we do is not different than what we might do if we were in a corporation or a not-for-profit or a hospital or healthcare setting. It's still the same thing. What is truly unfortunate about public affairs strategic planning is that we seem to get niched into 2 and 4 year cycles. Mm-hmm. And of course you can well imagine those 2 and 4 year cycles happen to do with election cycles. Mm-hmm. But what we really need to do is to take that longer term perspective and remember who it is we're really serving. And that is our public constituencies, not our elected constituencies. Mm-hmm. So how is it different? It's not different. It's exactly the same. The public relations planners the senior leadership need to take a longer view of what we're doing. We need to be able to provide a circumstance in which we create relationships with our public constituencies, and we continue over long periods of time establishing what we're really trying to accomplish as an organization, whether that is a corporation that is trying to establish a product line, or it's a government agency who's trying to provide services to a particular constituent public in a state or a city or a county.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in other words, it doesn't matter whether you're in a government environment or not, stakeholders are still stakeholders that you have to build relationships with.
Absolutely right. Doesn't really matter. How we measure those relationships, how we measure our success may well be different from the corporate environment to the public environment, but nonetheless the basic goal is still the same.
Okay, great. Bob, can you tell me when we're talking about strategic PR planning, what are some of the benefits that brings specifically to the government communication process?
They're the same benefits as you would bring to any communication process for a corporation or not-for-profit or a government agency. They're really the same. And the first benefit we have to think about is the benefit of being at the management table to counsel and advise senior leaders in government. Okay. Everything that they do is in the public eye. They recognize that usually, but sometimes it takes us being the voice at the table that reminds them that behavior is communication. and that it's really important that we be there to give that advice and counsel, just as they would have other advisors and other counselors there to advise them and counsel them on appropriate behaviors and appropriate approaches to solve problems in government and in the public. The second particularly important point that I would make here is that we have to build a program in which we are measurable. We have an obligation to our publics, in many cases in government, it's the taxpayers. We have an obligation to them to demonstrate that what we are doing is being good stewards of their assets. So whatever it is that we're doing on a communication side, and even tied to an operational side, we have to demonstrate that what we're doing is being good stewards of their assets, that we are actually accomplishing what we set out to accomplish with those assets.
And you know, I've seen in my own experience the measurement piece and having the results from that measurement actually translate right into legislative proposals as well as into, budget support, for programs and so forth. So.
Absolutely. The things that we do can better inform our legislatures and allow them to do a better job of legislating, passing laws, passing regulations that will make government more efficient, make government better at serving the people that they're elected to serve.
And that's our whole purpose for being here.
I think it is, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely.